Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, the best damn podcast for the best damn football team. I'm your host, the Football Grump. With me, as always, is Mike, the Cranky Fan, and we are happy to report some good news from Friday night's preseason game.
Well, the good news is A, no one got really hurt, and B, we saw one drive of an offense that might actually be something. That was
It looked like an NFL offense.
looked like an NFL offense. It looked like sort of a modern day offense. You know, we don't go crazy when in one drive an offense goes 3 and out. We also don't go crazy after one drive that they go 70 yards and look very efficient, but it was definitely something that, at least for another week, makes us feel good about ourselves.
So we're gonna. This is gonna be probably one of the less structured episodes here. We recorded very late last week. We're right on top of this week, so there's not too much that's new other than the game. So
Yeah.
I think we're just gonna kind of freeform a lot of this. But before we get into all the things that were really great about this game, I guess I would just say so. It should be noted that Carolina's best edge rushers did not play in this game. Like Brian Burns was not here in this game. Probably one of their best players. That said, what I can take away from a really good drive from the starters against starters that ended in a touchdown, DJ going 8 of 9 with a drop being the only incomplete pass, is that that's what it should have been, right? I'm not saying that anything less than that would have made me unhappy, but this is an up and coming team in Carolina with a rookie quarterback, and they are not really considered, I don't think, by anyone to be competitive in the NFC South. So I wouldn't want to see that drive stall. I'm not going to, like you said, throw rose petals in the air and, you know, I don't know. I sound the alarms because they scored a touchdown on their opening drive and they looked good, but I'm not concerned. I don't feel super concerned after watching the starters. That's really
Uh,
the main thing. If they had struggled, if that didn't end in a touchdown, I'm also not going to pitch a fit, but I would be sitting here they probably should be scoring touchdowns on a team like this.
I, would like to see the starters play a little longer just to get a little more of a sense of, oh, this is really exciting or really something or not. But to me, it was just it was running through a drill,
Mhm.
and they, you know, we saw things. First of all, seeing Waller running around in space like that is something that gets you really, really excited. I
Oh yeah.
mean,
They
you
went to
know,
the
and,
well early and often with him too.
right. And remember something, this was not a normal Giants offense, normal personnel look, because Saquon Barkley didn't play. And not only did Saquon Barkley not play, we did not have one running back run on that entire drive. So what you're really seeing is, you know, almost force feeding Waller on most plays on that drive. So this is not what the Giant offense is going to look like. We're going to rely very heavily on Saquon Barkley and feed off of that. But having a guy that's a physical mismatch that can do so much over the middle, and it's going to make the running game better. It's going to make that deep outside threat. I think we both agree we're going to open up this offense more this year than last year. The offensive line should be better. You know, high is it more of a deep threat than we've had before? A better kind of the offense, all of these different things. And when you have a running back and a tight end who can do the things that they do and scare the shit out of a defensive coordinator, and you don't know what to prepare for, it's going to open up this offense by default. So that's what made me most excited. The fact we scored a touchdown is great, but the possibilities of what just one guy like that can do, not when you have the complete offense around him, that's what got me excited.
Yeah, I mean, the touchdown is really the icing on the cake. It's not about the points; it's about the fact that that first drive was pretty close to flawless. Um, Not a whole lot of negative plays. I think Daniel Jones only ran one time for six
Yeah.
yards. Um,
which
It's
is a positive. I mean, let's be
yeah.
honest. We don't want him running around that much. We want him to run when he has to, and then
Or
be
when it's
efficient when he
called.
does.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly. So like the touchdown to me really was more the fact that it was just the perfect ending to a perfect drive. Couple of little flubs on that drive. I think there was an end around to Jalen Hyatt that was garbage and I think lost yardage. And end arounds are one of those things that either work or they look terrible. They never look in between. It's not, and when it's a 0 yard gain, it looks terrible. So I don't like end arounds as a general rule. I don't think that Jalen Hyatt is a kind of guy that I want running sideline to sideline a whole lot. Nevertheless, it's one of those things that just looks bad when it doesn't work,
Well,
regardless.
it's one of those things too that it's on tape, and maybe it's not Hyatt. Maybe someday Wandale Robinson's running it, or something where they have to spend 5 minutes of practice time knowing that's in our tool chest. We may
Sure,
not
and
use
then
it.
just throw Jalen Hyatt in motion all the time and make them get all worried about it.
Exactly. So it may have looked ugly, but now they know that that's something that you know, we might be doing in the future. We may or may not see it. So.
The only thing that I think Daniel Jones could have done better, there was like one throw to Paris Campbell in the flat that was just kind of like, it just looked awkward, and I don't know whose fault it was. I don't know exactly where Paris Campbell's supposed to stand, but it was like behind him. He kind of had to like spin inside to make the catch, and all of his momentum was lost, and everyone kind of gathered. I think if that were a better throw, there's a chance it was a touchdown, but that was the only real dark spot, I would say, in the drive. And it's like the most minor dark spot I can think of.
Was that play the Evan Neal Glowinski missing the stunt? Was that in that first drive or is that the second drive?
That was the first drive, but I don't think that stunt resulted in anything.
It didn't result in anything, but one of those that's like, ugh, because we are definitely watching the guards and Evan Neal, in this preseason to see,
For sure.
Who's ultimately going to be starting at those two guard, positions, and we obviously want Evan Neal to progress so people can sleep at night knowing he's our right tackle. So that, it looked bad, and it's one of those, oh boy, what's going on things. So that bothered me more than the that one particular throw.
Yeah, and I know it's usually bad if you text me in the middle of a drive. But yeah, the interior of that offensive line is going to be something that is a point of emphasis, I would say, when it comes to roster cutdowns. It's going to be interesting to see who wins the depth chart, how that shakes out. What they're aiming for seems to be Josh Azudu taking the left guard spot, Ben Bredesen taking the right guard spot, using Mark Lewinsky as a backup, having John Michael Schmitz in the middle. But, whether it's Josh Azudu not really claiming that left guard spot or, Ben Bredesen not claiming the right guard spot, I don't know what it is, but they are hesitant to, like, we had a whole, like, what was it, like 3 weeks of training camp of the center rotation. They had one game, and John Michael Schmitz is just a center now. Like, they were convinced. That has not, and I don't expect that to have been the case with the left and right guard spots after 2 games. I think we're going to continue to see that rotation because no one's won the job.
Right.
That being said, Neal looked pretty good in this game, but again, not playing Brian Burns, what does that mean? Well, it's certainly good that he didn't look bad.
He's looking good in reps right now. That's a difference between, you're going to be facing a lot of talent in our division and in our conference, and the competition is going to get better. Sticking with the offensive line, Matt Pert.
Not very good, huh?
At what point do we give up on this, experiment? I guess because, he was drafted. It was a project when we drafted him. This is his 3rd year now?
Third? No, 4th. He was drafted the same year as Andrew Thomas.
Okay, 4th year, even worse.
Yeah.
And, he's not tackle 1A. If somebody gets hurt and go in there and you play right away, he's just kind of not good.
He's a tackle. That's about it.
Yeah, he's a tackle. He's a body. I mean, we're gonna have our roster predictions next week, and I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think Tyree Phillips is probably the guy for right now. It's also the kind of thing where if a good tackle shakes loose on cutdown day, I wouldn't rule that out either.
Yeah.
When do we give up on Matt Pert is probably at the end of this year, I would say. They had a lot of roster holes to fill when they showed up. They did the best they could in that first year. This offseason, they made some moves to make as much cap space as they could to add pieces. They traded player for player, picks for player. They acquired as much talent as they could with the restrictions they had. They had a lot of retaining they had to worry about. The big year of cap space is next year. They have tons of cap room and only really like Xavier McKinney, Leonard Williams, and Adoree Jackson to worry about. And I don't know. I given the D line that they have, Leonard Williams leaving wouldn't be the worst thing on the planet Earth. Though I think we would both like him to be here. It's certainly, not something that's going to be like, oh no, what are we going to do? We have no D linemen. And I would say the same thing with Adoree Jackson with the emergence of Trey Hawkins, and Cordell Flott continuing to grow, and the fact that they have a whole offseason to acquire replacements for these guys. I think that that's when you're going to start seeing them worrying about acquiring talent for depth.
Yes.
So like they've been here, they've been trying to purchase veterans for depth and acquire talent to develop into, starting roles, and really worrying about that. And they're always going to in the first 3 rounds be looking for starters, right, of the draft.
Adoree Jackson, playing in the slot to me is as much of a, let's prepare for the future as much as is a present thing.
It could be, yeah. I mean, Trey Hawkins has passed just about every test he's been given. And by past test, I don't mean that he's won every rep. I mean he's made it out alive. Right. And he had another really good practice. I think he had a pick in practice today of Daniel Jones, which is pretty impressive. Daniel Jones has not thrown a lot of interceptions in camp. As long as Trey Hawkins continues to pass tests, he's going to be given new ones, which means playing time. Eventually, that's what it's going to mean. And if he continues to pass tests, they're just going to have to weigh that when it comes to Adoree Jackson time.
And they're going to be very significant tests because they are going to target him. If Adoree's going to be in the slot, they're going to pick on him, and they're going to challenge him.
So would you say after 2 preseason games, week 1 playing Dallas, is Trey Hawkins a starter or whatever? Is he getting significant playing time due to the wide receiver set that they have?
I think they are grooming him to start on week 1.
I think I agree with you. I think that's a great time to put Adoree Jackson up on CeeDee Lamb, and let Trey Hawkins and Deonte Banks worry about the lessers.
I think this is going to be kind of a matchup thing from week to week anyway. Who's going to be bouncing inside and outside? But I think they're, to answer your question, I think more in the spirit of what you're asking for. I think they have enough confidence in him that he could be part of that 3-man rotation as a starter.
Yeah, which is essentially what I'm hinting at.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Did any of us think that, draft day?
No, well, so draft day, I was in Manhattan for all 3 days at the Talkin' Giants live draft, right? In my last minute things, the first day of the draft, I finished up only the prospects that I hadn't watched already that had private visits with the Giants, just because that's sort of been the MO with this coaching staff, is signing players that they had private visits with. Trey Hawkins was on there. I only had like 2 games worth of film to even watch of him because he played at Old Dominion. So I watched those 2 games. I had some notes on him, and I thought that he was a good late round guy. I didn't really expect them to draft him. So, no, to answer your question. Like I said, I only just did the research on him because he had a private visit. If they didn't, I wouldn't even known who this person was.
I would say it's been the most pleasant surprise so far of training camp.
Yeah, I would have to say so. Who else would be the better surprise? Darren Waller, maybe?
Hyatt, maybe? Because there were not so much. There was a lot of questions about, well, does he really know? What's his route tree? What can we really expect from him? And so far, he has been, he's been a a highlight film in practices. He had the big catch on Friday night. I mean,
Yeah,
now,
so I do want to mention Jalen Hyatt's big catch.
yes,
That was impressive to me. Me personally, I found that impressive. Like, so you have the broadcast angle, and the camera's panning over after the ball's released, which is an absolute lollipop mortar.
yeah, we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah. um, and the camera moves over, and it's like, okay, there's the defender. Then where's the defender that's covering Hyatt? And then it keeps panning, and then you see Hyatt, and it's like, oh, that's supposed to be him? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, my immediate reaction was like, oh, Jesus, he really cooked this guy. And then you get the other camera angles, and it's like, wow, he really did cook that guy. You had him in a back pedal. He just kind of shows him the post and hits the corner and throttles his speed properly. For a guy who supposedly can't run routes, that was a pretty well run route.
He did two things. He ran the route well, and he came back to the ball because it was not a well thrown ball. I mean,
Yeah.
I get it. He was under some duress, Taylor, but still, he had to make an adjustment on it. And those are type of adjustments maybe you don't see, raw rookies making.
Right. I agree. Or just pure speed guys.
Mm-hmm.
Guys who only know one speed, they can't, I don't know, the hand-eye coordination, the speed, all that stuff, like getting in position, it's not the same. So, yeah, I thought that was a great run route. I'm excited for him. And he's been on, and I had tempered expectations for Jalen Hyatt. I didn't really know what he was. I was waiting to see, and he didn't really have an explosive start to camp, I wouldn't say.
Disappointing in the first couple, I think.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the reports were that he was getting frustrated. He was sitting with the threes and stuff like that, and I guess when you're with the threes, you're not really getting the throws.
Yeah.
And it's been just a steady climb ever since. Like, just better and better each day, getting more and more good news.
There's a difference between being wide receiver one and being like your big play wide receiver. And I think
Sure.
the way this offense is going to be set up, I said it a little while ago that this is an offense that's going to be Saquon Barkley 1, Darren Waller 2. And then that's going to open up everything else.
Everybody else is going to feed off of 1-2.
I don't expect
including Daniel Jones's runs, by the way.
Exactly right. So I don't expect Hyde to have, lead the team in receptions. I don't expect him to lead the team in yards. I don't expect him to lead the team in touchdown catches. But I think because of the way this offense is being built and these other weapons, my prediction he'll lead the team in yards per catch. He will lead the team in explosive plays. He will lead the team in longest touchdown catches because it's going to be predicated by everything that's set up for him. And that's the sign of having a good offense and good personnel to match what that offense wants to be. Something I never thought we'd be saying in the last X amount of years with this Giants team, too. It's a very pleasant thing to start talking about now.
For real. And if Saquon Barkley and Darren Waller are going to be 1-2 that opens everybody else up, Jalen Hyatt is going to open up everything underneath. And I don't really know. I'm going to be interested to see how they deploy personnel and stuff. I wonder what that does to coverage on Darius Slayton, another guy who, by the way, led the team last. He was our leading receiver last year. So, not to be forgotten, Darius Slayton, also a speed guy, probably going to be the second thought for a defense in terms of speed, right?
Sure. I mean, he's been in my doghouse for years, but the facts are the facts. And I think now he doesn't have to be relied on to be the guy. Maybe those drops don't happen as much, or just that, not making the play when needed is not going to be as critical for him. So getting more talent on a team puts everybody in their proper slotting where they need to be. So that's good.
Do you want to flip to defense? Anybody else on offense? Do you want to talk about Eric Gray at all or anything?
I want to talk about Eric Gray.
Go ahead.
Because it's going to be hard to keep him on the field because I thought he did a terrible job pass blocking. And
I would say so.
That's a real liability. If we're still concerned a little bit about Evan Neal, we're still concerned about the guard situation on this team. John Michael Smith is still a rookie and still has to prove it on the field, on a play-by-play, down-by-down, series-by-series basis. this team can't afford to have a running back out there, even if it's on a change of pace series or something, to give Saquon a blow to be that bad. And I, one of my crazy predictions might be that, does he make this roster because he's that bad?
You know, it's pretty crazy. I think it's nuts. But I'd be lying to you if I wasn't sitting there like, why does Eric Gray deserve a roster spot over Jashawn Corbin, who I have no affinity towards? I don't really care about Jashawn Corbin at all. But if you put their film right next to each other from that game and told me to pick which running back played better, I would ask you if you were really wasting my time with this question. It's unquestionable. Jashawn Corbin has looked good now for 2 preseason games, and he is, I don't know, is he behind Gary Brightwell even on this roster? He might be.
I think he is. I definitely going into these preseason games he was.
And I wouldn't say Eric Gray has done anything on special teams. They are literally handing him that job of punt returner, kick returner. They're telling, at least it was reported during preseason broadcast, that they're telling him to return everything no matter what, just to see. And other than running up, so the wind apparently was really bad during this game. He did make a fair catch on a punt on the running forward towards coverage, which is pretty difficult to do. But other than that, I didn't see anything. I mean, what did you think of his touchdown run?
It's all right, but I mean, like most running backs do that?
I was going to say that looked to me like one of Josh Azudu's best blocks of the night.
Yeah,
It looked like, if you freeze frame that the moment Eric Gray gets the ball, it's like, okay, most NFL running backs would get you at least 7 yards on this play. And that's not shitting on Eric Gray at all. It's just I don't know how much to weight that touchdown, and his effort to push the extra 2 yards to the goal line is cool and noteworthy, but doesn't make up for 5 missed blocks,
Yeah. And again, it depends on the situation. Like I said, if we had a much more stable offensive line and that wasn't a concern, I'd look at it a little differently. But
Sure.
I don't know. Just a little
This has
little
been
nervous for him right now.
So if I had one sticking point with this front office or Brian Dable or whatever, just when it came to us that Joe Shane and Brian Dable were leaving the Bills, they were joining the Giants, the one thing I would say that seemed weird is their version of evaluation of running backs. And I say that because they took like 3 running backs in the first 4 rounds of the draft in like 4 years. Some of them I did not think were very good, like Zach Moss from Utah. They drafted, I want to say, in like the 2nd round or 3rd round or something. I didn't see it with him at all, and he flamed out. So I don't know, man. This is now the first running back that they drafted. Not looking so hot right now.
But we also,
I mean, it's
giving up on him a little early.
I'm not giving up anything. I'm saying,
Yeah.
if there was one thing about this regime that I was like, that's an interesting, weird, bad thing, that they don't seem to be very good at evaluating running backs. That was like my takeaway is like, I just don't agree with their analysis of running backs. I don't agree with it. I wouldn't pick any of those guys at those points or whatever. Devin Singletary notwithstanding. And then they go ahead and they pick this guy who I didn't have a whole lot of pre-work on. But when I did look at him, I could see what they were looking at, whatever. But, I mean, these are also the experts. I did my post-analysis. So, like, they had already drafted him, and I was watching him. I wasn't like, I didn't fit Eric Gray into my roster, my draft sheet. So, I don't know. I don't know. I'm interested to see how Eric Gray pans out when it comes to, so I can add that into that bank of knowledge I have, their past running back decisions.
But again, though, we're picking on something that is kind of a secondary trait. It's a very, very important trait that they have to have. But
well, I didn't even think he ran that well.
Yeah, well,
what has he done well that's like, oh, okay,
that's true.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. And there's college things that I like from him. It's not like I don't see it with him, but this could have been a whiff. I mean, I know it's very early to say that, but
The blocking is a concern level for me for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Did you want to flip to defense?
Let's flip to defense.
All right, so I want to talk immediately about Dexter Lawrence. He had a neutral zone infraction, which is, I think, was just him very excited to hit people. Great QB pressure. He had a really good swim move for another pressure. I know that this is the Giants, and I'm going to be more partial to them always, but the roughing the passer penalty. I mean, we've entered the point where two-hand touch is now a 15-yard penalty. I mean, really. Incidental contact to the head is with a hand of all things, not forcible with, not going for a tackle, just kind of incidental hand stuff that happens, as you're shedding a block and heading towards a quarterback and trying to block a pass. I understand it's preseason and they may not call things the same way, but if that happens in the regular season game, this portion of the episode would be the leading part, and there would be like 3 or 4 desks being flipped over while I'm doing this.
Well, first of all, if they are calling things differently in the preseason than they are in the regular season, that's a problem. Because,
I agree. It's preseason for everybody.
Traditionally, you try out new things in preseason and you may call things a little harder than, but still, the league is always a pendulum, and all sports are a pendulum. They feel the rules are quarterback is in danger too much, so they put in rules and they enforce rules, and it goes too far this way, and then it swings back. I think we're really getting to that point where we've swung as far to the right as we can, and the Players Association has a say in rules, and we're trying to protect quarterbacks at all costs, but there are also 21 other players on the field at the same time, and if there's an you can't do your job because the rules are so skewed, there's going to be problems. If you can't tackle the way you know how to tackle, or you're giving a quarterback a competitive advantage because you can't touch him, that just makes it easier for him to do his job at the expense of others. So I really think we are coming close to a tipping point with this, that, we're all for protecting everybody and the health of these players, because obviously we don't want these guys getting hurt. We want the best possible product on the field as long as we can. But, the game is impacted on the field. This, at the end of the day, this game is about running, throwing, catching, blocking, and tackling. And if you can't tackle anymore, it's a different game. So I think, it'd probably be something like a call that changes the outcome of a playoff game, or decides who makes the playoffs or a Super Bowl. But we're about at that tipping point where it's going to start swinging back the other way.
I think that at a certain point we have to stop treating quarterbacks like they are stupid, or they are so fragile that the idea of, I think we all know a bad hit when we see one, but too often I'm seeing now quarterbacks becoming runners, and doing this thing where they start running as guys are coming at them like sideways, like they're about to slide, but they're still running full speed, or running towards the sideline, and then suddenly they just jet up the side of the sideline as they see defenders are letting up because they know they can't hit them. I mean, quarterbacks are not stupid. They understand how to work this rule to their own favor.
There's also a rule called unsportsmanlike conduct, which if you try to do that, a referee has every right to throw a flag on it.
I would say Tyrod Taylor did it in this game. I would say Tyrod Taylor was at one point running forward, 2 defenders were coming at him, and he started running kind of on the sides of his feet, but still hadn't slid yet. And it leaves a defender who is running at full speed, also trying to keep his job, let's just keep that in the back of our minds,
exactly,
to make a decision on whether or not he's going to hit this person. And the wrong decision, whether it's to hit him or to let up and let him continue to move, might cost him his job. And I just think we've entered this realm of silliness. Like, we don't suddenly, everything is very black and white and we can't tell the difference. But there used to be 2 different penalties for face mask.
Right.
And, that was a bad idea. I'm not saying that that's a good idea, but it at least hints at the idea that we have brains and we're able to tell the difference between touching somebody on the head and forcible contact right at somebody's face, you know?
And if you follow me on Twitter or you know me at all, you know I'm a very black and white person. I believe in, you know, it's rules are rules. Rules are to be enforced. There's no, well, almost no. That's why I'm always in favor of instant replay to determine inbounds, out of bounds, fair ball, foul ball.
But those are black and white things.
Exactly. But in this instance, where something like that, I try to take the subjectivity as much as I can out of officiating, but this is definitely judgment, and officials are smart enough to have a judgment to know if somebody intent. If I am hitting somebody and I graze the back of the helmet and it's purely not intent, that's not a penalty, because you cannot prevent guys from hitting helmets just because of the arm angle and the speed of the game.
It is a game about hitting.
Yes.
It is a game about hitting. There is no player that you can't hit. There are instances where you're not allowed to hit certain players, but we have now made it like it's a big muddy thing and we can't tell when that is. We know when that is, and we know what bad hits are. Exactly. It's very silly for us to act like we don't know. There are judgment calls in terms of, defenseless players.
Holding is considered as a judgment call if you think about it.
Sure.
I mean, there is judgment, and I think those are the types of things of judgment that should be. You should give officials the license to use their judgment, because officials know the rules more than any player who's playing. They know the rules more than any coach is coaching. And they're on the field, they see it, and they have the ability with instant replay to get it right if it was wrong. So, and the same thing with the other side too. Like you're talking about the Tyra Taylor play where you're faking that you're going down and going. You should be penalized just as much for, taking advantage of this situation too.
I know it's just a preseason game, and I had a lot of trouble containing my rage from that moment, because that was a very ridiculous call, and I knew that the ultimate thing that kept me from actually flipping out is knowing that this game doesn't matter, none of this matters. Right. But if it did, I don't know when my anger stops with something like that. I think anytime I see that call, no matter who is playing, it's going to enrage me, whatever. So I just wanted to mention that because we saw something similar the week before with Baldonado very late in the game. Similar situation where it was like contact up around the head that was like, I don't want to say incidental, but like clearly was not the intent of taking the head off of quarterback. It's just sort of the nature of what happens when you have two guys grappling, right in front of a quarterback. It's just what happens. So this is now 2 weeks in a row I've seen it happen. I'm getting frustrated. If I see it happen in a regular game, God help you if it's at MetLife Stadium, because I might be kicked out. I just, whatever. That was what I had on Dexter Lawrence. I thought Dexter Lawrence looked like a force. He looked scary, and I think in practice today, Leonard Williams looked like an animal. That's really good to hear.
Everybody's so quick to want to get rid of Leonard Williams because of the contract, but those two together, that's a dynamic duo that you're going to see during this season. And hopefully, as we're building a little more depth, that they don't have to play every snap and they can get a blow or two and be more effective throughout each game and throughout the whole season.
Gun to your head, is Leonard Williams re-signed with the Giants next year?
Yes.
I think so too. I think
he may not be paid, relative to what he was last contract, but he will get paid pretty well, and there'll be more money that'll be available to do it. And I think if you have a core that you're building, and it could be something special this year, going into year 3 of this defense, assuming, well, let's put it this way. Do you think that changes if Wink is still here or not? Your decision, are they going to keep him or not?
I think it could, yeah. I don't know. I'm not giving you a hard yes or no. Like, I don't think it's directly tied, but I mean, anytime you bring in a guy with a different system or a different outlook, there's a chance that anybody could go,
Right.
So
but I think in this system with this coach, I think if Wink is back for year 3, I definitely think he'll be back.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. Yeah. He knows how to use him. He understands him.
And I think we've been working the cap to have the opportunity to keep our best players too. This is not your father's Giants where every time we had a good defensive tackle, well, it's time to say bye bye. We can't afford it.
Um, Kayvon Thibodeau had a sack in this game. Any thoughts, comments, concerns?
I think he'll be just fine.
Yeah.
I think people think that he should have been Lawrence Taylor on week 1, and partly because of where he was drafted, part because of his personality, part because of his tape in college. Um, the NFL is a lot different than college, and I think he has to just keep playing. And I think we're going to see big strides from him. I think having a better all-around defense around him will make him better. Having more of a pass rush. I think this defense is going to be a little more exotic than it was last year. I think he'll be just fine.
I agree with you. So I could have told you, I think I might have said it on this show. I said it somewhere. God, I'm old.
Tell me about it.
I wouldn't be shocked if Kayvon Thibodeau's career numbers look a lot like JPP numbers, where it's middle of the road sacks, somewhere between like 5 and 9 most years, and then like you'll have a random year that's like 16 or 15 or something like that might have to do with a system or a schedule or just him hitting a groove or whatever it is. But so like Jordan Renan put out like a sack, I guess, predictions for the year, and it was like Azeez Ojulari was like 7.5, and I think Kayvon was like 6 or 6.5 or something like that. And every comment underneath it was like they were calling Kayvon a bust, et cetera, et cetera. When you look at this Wink defense, I don't see the majority of our sacks coming from the edge rushers. I think they're going to be spread out. I think more than 1 or 2 players having a lot of sacks, we'll have like a lot of players with very few sacks. 1 or 2, but there'll be Jason Pinnock and, who's coming out, the Cordell Flott, Nick McLeod, Xavier McKinney, Leonard Williams, Dexter Lawrence. I think they're going to be spread out all over the place because of the nature of this defense. Bobby Okereke. I mean, they're going to be all kinds of different guys. I don't think it's going to be the 2 edge rushers getting 14 sacks apiece, right? Or am I wrong?
First of all, if you can guarantee me JPP's career without the firecrackers, I'll sign up for it right now.
Whenever I said, wherever I was when I said it, I said that would be his like ceiling. He wasn't going to be a Lawrence Taylor, was what I was saying.
Nobody ever was.
Good
point.
Nobody
will be Lawrence Taylor again. And second of all, I don't think the sack is the end-all be-all determination of how good someone like him can be.
Thank you.
I need somebody who's constantly going to be a disruption, somebody who you have to constantly game plan for, someone you have to account for in every single play. Where is he? And because we have other guys, we have Azeez on the other side, we have a Dexter Lawrence and a Larry Williams, on the offensive line. The whole reason we have Wink Martindale is, controlled chaos, heavy blitzing, causing the quarterback to, stay up at night on Thursday being scared about what's happening on Sunday. So I don't need the big sack number from him. I need him to be a constant disruption. I need him to, be somebody that I don't need one guy to have gaudy numbers and the rest of the defense sucking. I need him to be part of a unit that it can come from anywhere at any time. And I think that's what we're on the road to.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I think that pressures often indicate more things than sacks. I think actually pressures are probably the best because pressures lead to incomplete passes, short arm throws, bad decisions, interceptions,
checking down.
Sacks are great because it's a negative play, and it usually results in a punt at a certain point. But pressures could lead to any number of things.
It could lead to holding, which would be 10 yards. It could lead to a lot of things that could happen.
Yeah. And consistent pressures lead to like gameplay changes, like where it's like, well, you know what, this plan isn't going to work because we apparently can't block him. So people come out at halftime, they have to completely change the way they expected to play the game. That is a huge win, and that doesn't happen because a guy gets 2 sacks in a game. That happens because a guy gets 6 pressures.
He hasn't even played a full season's worth of
That's
games yet in the
also
NFL.
true. Yeah. I mean, I have no worries about him. I think so far he looks like the player I expected him to be, his draft status notwithstanding.
Exactly. It's all good.
Yeah. Jordan Riley, on the other hand, looks very amazing for a 7th-round draft pick. On 4th and 1, completely bullied the center backwards, which I believe is their starting center. Completely disengaged and swallowed the running back whole. That was like a Damon Harrison play from a 7th-round rookie. Albeit, I think he's like 25 years old, but...
And that's what I was saying before, is that if this guy can be a legitimate part of your rotation, you can give Leonard Williams a blow on a play or two, and now make it more effective, because these guys wear down and they become less effective and they get hurt when they're on the field every play.
Because I remember
you just don't trust the guy behind you.
Leonard Williams last year was walking from practice to like either the clubhouse or out to his car or whatever the hell it was, and I want to say it was Dan Duggan, one of the reporters, like asked him like, how's the arm or whatever, because he had like a bum arm, like he's like, yeah, you feeling any better? And he was like, no. He was hurt like all year last year and played like 95% of snaps. So Jordan Riley, Rakeem Nunez-Roches, A'Shawn Robinson, those guys are going to do more for this team than any of their stats will ever indicate, right? Like they get like a 25% bonus just for any amount of stats that Dexter Lawrence and Leonard Williams get.
Yeah, sure. And we haven't seen them yet at all. I mean, they're
just Jordan Riley, yeah.
Yeah, they've been banged up. The other two guys, they'll be back, but they will play a very, very important part for spelling these guys, and it's going to be critical.
Especially down the stretch. Hopefully we'll see dominant Leonard Williams and Dexter Lawrence in weeks 15, 16, 17, 18.
Yeah. And more importantly, in January.
That's right. That was kind of the game. That was sort of the week this week in practice today. What are your expectations for Daniel Jones this year? What do you think of him?
I think Daniel Jones is going to take another step up. I think that this is the first time in his career with this team that there's stability. And it's not learning something new. It's not introducing yourself to, or wondering who my number one guy is going to be. And that number one guy is not a number one guy. He now has a number one guy in Waller. He has, a better offensive line. I think he's going to take the biggest step in his career from one year to the next this season. And it's going to be kind of quiet too. I think all the spotlight's going to be on, Saquon Barkley. Waller's going to make, he just looks physically imposing. Hyatt might make the highlight plays, things like that. And I think Daniel Jones is just going to do his thing. And I think you're going to look and you're going to see in the box score, you're going to see, high completion percentage, high efficiency ratings. I think this is going to be the first year you're going to stop every time there's an interception, talking about every single turnover he's had in his life. I think that narrative is going to go away. I look at him as the captain of this offense now. And that's the first time you can say that.
Yeah, it's like if there was a current Giants Mount Rushmore, he's kind of like the fourth head behind like Joe Shane, Brian Dable, Mike Kafka. It'd be Daniel Jones.
Oh, sure, absolutely. I mean, he's part of the brain trust. I mean, he's going to have to, he's going to have more control of the offense. I think they're probably going to give him more freedom to, audible out of plays and stuff, because he knows this offense now. It's his year two. And, 2 full off seasons, 2 OTAs, a full season. This is his time. And quite frankly, it kind of needs to be his time. You're going into year 5. It's not quarterbacks. You can't wait forever to say, what is this quarterback going to be? I mean, there is still room for growth, but that learning curve is going to end pretty soon. So, I expect a jump. But I think we're going to know pretty soon in the next year or so what kind of quarterback is Daniel Jones. Is he going to make that jump and all of a sudden be one of the elite quarterbacks in this league, or is just going to be a very good quarterback in this league? I mean, we said we'd sign up before if Dexter Kayvon Thibodeau could be JPP. Well, would you sign up right now if he becomes Phil Simms?
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so it's kind of amazing to think that he would be considered the fourth head on Mount Rushmore, right? Considering that at the beginning of last year, they were just not able to pick up his fifth-year option. I mean, how could you pick up his fifth-year option? You don't know anything about him, whatever. I mean, this is a guy who has been booed since the moment he was selected. And now we're talking about him being the fourth head. And I think I agree with your assessment. I think that there will be less reliance on Daniel Jones having to run. There are going to be so many guys wide open. His numbers are going to be through the roof, but I think we're going to continue to see what we already saw from this weekend from miserable people like Mina Kimes who are unable to give Daniel Jones any credit whatsoever. We'll hear a lot of Brian Dable and Mike Kafka are really good kind of comments, but that's going to be a direct result of Daniel Jones's work. Sure, the offense is going to help. The added pieces obviously help. But Jones is going to be able to very casually and very easily, just like he looked in this preseason game, find guys who were wide open. Wide open.
It's really strange, Grump, that he just signed a contract, 4 years, $160 million, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't get any sense of the narrative offseason that the pressure is on him. I feel almost kind of the opposite. Like, the pressure is off him at this point.
I would say this is probably the least pressure I would say the pressure's on him in the sense that if he can't perform with added weapons, that's a bad thing. But to your point, this feels like the least amount of pressure that's ever been on him.
Yeah, that would be the result of him not playing well. The pressure would then come on him, but I don't get the sense of like, you have to fulfill this contract. You have to, I don't get the sense of that at all. And I almost feel a little bit like that was the biggest story in the second half of last year. And as soon as that playoff game was over, are they going to sign Daniel Jones? What are they going to do? What are they going to do? And right after they signed that contract, it was no longer a thought.
No, it just immediately shifted to the Barkley thing.
It went to the Barkley thing, but it's just kind of like, he's just signed and he's just here now. And I think that's a good thing. I mean, the worst thing you do is have all this added pressure on you. It's enough pressure to be the quarterback of an NFL team. There's a lot of pressure to be the quarterback in this town. Having extra pressure after contracts and expectations and all this. And I think that's part of because the narrative of this team around the league is this team isn't that good. And last year might have been a bit of a fluke. I don't get the sense at all that the national perspective from media, other fans, whoever is, the Giants are on the verge of potential greatness in a year or two. It's, take the under for wins. The wins number isn't that high. They are definitely behind Philly and Dallas. And I think that's going to help Daniel Jones. That's less pressure that's being put on him. I mean, that perception, that national media, that narrative, it's there. And it's actually a good thing, I think. Let them go under the radar, do their thing. Don't let every incomplete pass be an indictment on Daniel Jones. Was he worth the contract or not? Just play and see what happens.
Yeah, I think that even if the national media's assessment of the Giants is that Brian Dable and Mike Kafka are brilliant and that Daniel Jones is the lucky participant in that, even if they're going to be wrong. Dan Schneier pointed out something that I've been talking about for probably like the last 2 years now, is the small improvements that nobody talks about Daniel Jones. And the biggest one is by far his pocket movement. And Dan Schneier did a really good job of clipping a play from the game on Friday where he kind of stepped up away from tackle pressure and then out to his right, and just very methodically at the top of his drop, moved back up, moved back out, found his escape route, continued looking downfield, etc. You know, that was, I would say, the biggest problem he had coming into the league, and he's already improved on that. He's cut down on his interceptions, he's cut down on all turnovers, he seriously cut down on fumbling when getting hit. I mean, that was like, do you feel the same way now? Like every time Daniel Jones has someone barreling down on him that he's going to drop the ball? Because I don't feel that way anymore.
I haven't felt that for a couple of years, actually.
Right.
Very
So
honestly.
my DJ expectations, everyone else can screw off. I've watched this kid grow in all the areas I needed to see him grow, and just because everybody else couldn't see that he had good deep ball accuracy is not my problem. My expectations for DJ were I think they always were for him at this point. I thought that he could get to this point eventually.
I mean,
so I feel good.
It's very hard to be a really good quarterback in this league when you have bad play calling, a bad offensive line, bad receivers, and a franchise running back who's hurt and not playing for you.
Yeah, and I would say a completely flawed front office.
Yeah, and you know something? There's one guy who doesn't think that he is just the recipient of really good coaching. That's his general manager, who gave him $40 million.
Sure.
If he thought that, well, this offense can be good with anybody, they would have kicked him to the curb. They would have gone dumpster diving and gotten a Baker Mayfield or
Derek Carr or somebody.
Exactly. Who that's like, just give me somebody at a fraction what the cost will be, and we can mold you into something great. They spent the money on a guy because of the talent that he has and the potential that he still has. So, yes, you need to have good coaching is very important in this league. It's that little extra difference between two teams. It's, game preparation, play calling, all of that. But at the end of the day, it's played on the field.
We are coming up on an hour, so we're going to close out this episode with team expectations this year. So you were telling me that ESPN did like a ceiling and floor for every team.
They don't have it open.
No, that's okay. You told me. So you had the ceiling for the Giants was 11-6. The floor was 6-11, and you were telling me that they were depending a lot of it on Darren Waller's health, right?
That's correct.
Okay, here's why I think that is both sort of the correct numbers, but a horseshit reason. Look, this offense, this team, they didn't have a Darren Waller last year, and they eked out 9 wins and a shitty tie. So that was pretty much 10 wins that were in their grasp last year without a Darren Waller, without all these things that they got this offseason, without Daniel Jones having any confidence in him, with them shuffling the roster for the first 5 weeks, trading Kadarius Toney halfway through the year. They got 9 wins anyway. And I know that not everything is created equal, but Darren Waller's health is not going to be the determining factor. If Darren Waller gets hurt and can't play, they already have an entire playbook of shit that fucking works without Darren Waller, plus Jalen Hyatt, Paris Campbell. They have all these other things, and a healthy Sterling Shepard. They have all these other things at their disposal if Darren Waller gets hurt. If Daniel Jones gets hurt, then you'll see the 6-11 drop. That's where I'm at. And we did our pens and pencils, and you and I both landed at 11-6 for whatever our ridiculous reasons were on a week-to-week basis. That's where we landed. So 11-6 is not outlandish to me. Then I got put on the spot on Friday. I joined Bobby for Talking Giants before the game, and he asked me my record prediction. What do I have to go off of other than our pens and pencils? So I said 11-6. We just did this exercise. I don't think 11-6 is ridiculous. But I do think that Darren Waller's health, I don't think is going to be the 5-game swing that ESPN thinks it is.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think?
I completely agree. First of all, I would put Darren Waller, I'd put him behind Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones, those guys, if they went down and swing the record on one guy being gone. I think a lot of people are so quick to jump on this schedule is so hard. And the first thing they'll say is, well, they play 2 against Philly, 2 against Dallas, the beginning part on the road. And I keep harking to this. We said it, I think, last week and the week before. Those 2 Philly games could be absolutely meaningless. They are at the end of the season. Philly may have already clinched a division, or we have already clinched the playoff spots, which is our part. So, that schedule potentially is not nearly as scary as it is just because of position. If you want to assume losses in the beginning of the year because we're on the road, you know, you can't assume losses at the end because of where those Philly games are. Um, almost every national pundit has us at a worse record than last year. But I want those same pundits to tell me where they think this team is worse than they were last year. To me, I look at wide receivers, better, tight end, better, offensive line, better, quarterback, better, with more experience and more grasp of this offense. Um, Defense, you know, to be determined still, but the point is they think that everything's going to be a drop off, and if they
Well,
believe in last year was a fluke.
Wait, hang on. To be determined on all of this, but where on defense did they not get better? Defensive line definitely better. Linebacker definitely better.
That's
Corner,
true.
I would say, they're moving on from
that's
Fabian Moreau, who was, I don't want to say just like a vet, and now you have two very promising rookies. That one's to be determined.
That's to be determined more than anything. Yeah.
But I guess, but I have more expectations for a first round pick than I do a veteran that was signed after cutdown day, any day of the week.
I'm not saying the upside and everything is certainly potentially better, but again, I have to see it on the field.
Sure.
But again, I'm picking this a little bit with that also. But my bigger point is almost everything on this team is an improvement over last year.
Yeah.
And you're going to tell me just because the schedule is why this team is going to be not worse, significantly worse? Not buying it. This league is too close for that.
I agree. And this Friday morning, we will have another episode for you with our 53-man roster prediction. That will be ahead of the Jets game, which neither of us are watching live because we'll be at a wedding.
Congratulations, Emily. Our cousin is getting married.
Yes.
We'll be there.
So we'll be together, we'll be drunk, and we won't be watching football. That'll be one of the rare occasions.
It's going to be pretty it's interesting because we'll be at a family wedding where there are Jet fans.
That's true.
As well as Giant fans being there. Aaron Rodgers' first game, all that nonsense, and, who cared anything about it. But, no, we will not be watching live. We will be celebrating our wonderful cousin's wedding, and I'm not saying that in sarcasm at all. We are really happy for that.
Yeah, so that episode's going to come out ahead of time, the roster projections, and then we will have Cut Down Monday, where we normally record on Mondays. So Tuesday morning after that will be probably a very tired Grump. I'm predicting that I will be trying my best to catch up on all the day's news and stuff ahead of the episode so we can record. And that will be there Tuesday morning. But this Friday morning will be our next episode, so be sure to subscribe on Twitter at Just Giants Pod, YouTube for Just Giants Podcast, and all your normal audio podcasts in iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Play, etc. And give us a shout to any of your friends. It's water cooler season right now. Oh. It is water cooler season in full swing. I know because I've had the same. It's Monday. I had like 7 Giants conversations with all 10 people that show up to my office today. So this is the time for you to tell them, listen, I watched this underrated podcast on YouTube, Just Giants Podcast. You should check it out.
This underwatched podcast. So we got to change that. So all you guys out there, everybody tell a friend and tell them to tell a friend. Subscribe, like us, follow us. Retweet us, re-X us, whatever you want to do. I'm not doing the X Twitter joke anymore. That's over. But we really appreciate all your help, and we want to make this show. We want to get to as many Giant fans as we can. So the more we interact and the more friends we make, the better conversations we have, and it makes us smarter too because we have a pretty smart audience out there. So you know where we are. Tell a friend about us.
And with that, we will see you all Friday morning. Until then, go Giants.
Go Giants.